Storytelling is all about taking a character from point A to point Z, where his goals and his rewards await him. But in order to do that, he has to go through a transformative journey. And so, how does he do that? And what do we actually mean by a transformative journey? So, today we're going to talk about that.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Monte. I'm a women's fiction author, and I make videos on Fridays to try to help other writers who also want to complete their stories get closer to their goal. So in a way, you are going through a transformation as well, right? From a beginning author to maybe a published author, or maybe to an advanced author. So what I want to talk about then is, what is transformation? We know that characters go on a journey. If you've watched any of my videos, if you've read anything about characterization, you know that a character does have to go through some type of transformation. He starts at a certain point and he's going to end up being a different type of person by the end of your story. But often what we don't talk about is, what do we mean by transformation? Also, what is this character transforming into, and how do we get there? How do we get that character during that journey to that transformative person that we need that character, we want that character, that the character wants by the end of the story? Now, what I've written most of my life has been romance, women's fiction. So what transforms a character in a romance, for example? Well, we can say that love transforms the character, right? That changes the character from wherever he or she is at the beginning, whether they're in pain, whether they're distrustful, whatever, into a person who actually learns how to love and becomes a more trusting, more open, more loving person. And if we look at things, you know, it's sort of the Beauty and the Beast story, right? So we take this person who is angry, who is whatever, who is that beast, into somebody who is a more well-rounded, wonderful person. And but of course, I'm talking about a romance, right? Not every story is going to or not every not every story is the character going to be triggered by the same thing. So in romances, yes, it's love that changes people, but and it could be other things as well. But in other stories, it's going to be something different. So think of a book like Hunger Games, right? Where Katniss is transformed into this brave soldier, brave fighter. Well, what causes her? What is her trigger? It's not love, but we could say maybe partially it's love. Love for her sister. She doesn't want to see her sister die, because if you haven't read the Hunger Games, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but basically these kids are chosen to go fight for, fight for their continent, for their country, right? Their area, whatever they call it in the story. And her younger sister is chosen as one of the ones. And her younger sister, there's no way that she's going to survive these games, right? So Katniss decides she's going to take her place. So you could say that in a way she is, that is a motivator. Love is a motivator. It's not really what transforms her. What transforms her is a sense of justice, a sense of wanting to survive, of wanting to change things that are unjust, right? So these are the things that propel her and cause her to go on this journey to become a different type of person. She becomes even braver than she already is. She becomes more, warm-hearted in a way, because she protects not only her sister, but she protects other people, where you're not really supposed to care about the other people. You're supposed to kill them to survive, but she actually ends up caring about other people. And so not only is she protecting herself, but she's protecting others. And I would say that this is probably her biggest transformation, is going from someone who really only cares about her only family and protecting them, to protecting others in the community as a whole. And sometimes what prompts a character character to go on this transformative journey isn't anything external. Sometimes it's something internal. So if we go even way back to a different type of championship, right? So we have the Katniss who's fighting for other people and fighting for survival. But when we have like a character like Rocky, if you've watched the Rocky movies, a lot of people have watched those. What transformation does he go through? Well, he goes from someone who is not really very confident in himself and what he can do into someone who is a champion, right? Someone who grows and becomes stronger, not only physically, but also mentally. He actually fights to become someone. And he even says during the movie that, I just want to prove, I don't care if I win, I just want to prove that I'm not this nobody that people think. I'm not just this dumb guy, but I'm actually, more than that. So he goes on this transformative journey to prove to himself and to others, but mostly to himself, that he's not just this dumb street thug, but that he actually is someone who matters and that he's able to change his circumstances in life. And then lastly, my last example is I just actually read a novel by Judy Picoult. It's called The Pact. And in that, the whole story there is that there are two young people. Their parents have been friends since they were babies. They grow up. Their parents are they're expecting them to get together, to get married eventually, and they do. They become girlfriend and boyfriend, and it's about this girl's suicidal tendency. She wants to commit suicide, and when she does, the boy is accused of killing her. And so he ends up in jail awaiting trial. And what is this story? What is the journey that he goes through? It's his story. He goes from being sort of dependent and he can't really make a decision. Everything is about this girl, to becoming more of who he is. And he also transforms from a boy into a man because he is in prison, I guess he's in prison. And while in prison, of course, he has to toughen up. He has to become a different kind of person. He has to grow. So the trigger here is forced on him because he's in prison, because this girl decides that she wants to take her life, and she is his whole world. So the trigger here is that, once something, maybe your identity is taken away from you, how do you develop your own identity? How do you change? Because you have to, right? So sometimes it's thrust upon a character and they have to make that change internally. So the key here is for you to really understand your character. What is that catalyst that's going to push your character and help your character transform into the person that you want him to be? So we know where the character is going to start. We know where the character needs to end. What is going to change? What is going to push that character into the new person that you need them to be? So obviously we need to know what that trigger is going to be that's going to make our character change. But we also need to be really, really clear on what we want, how we want this character to end up at the end, right? So yeah, we know, okay, the character is weak, they're going to be strong, but that's not enough. You need to be very specific on what that change is going to be. We want to know what this character is going to transform into, because you as the author have to be super clear on that if you're going to want the reader to be clear on where we're going with the story. The reader will know from the beginning, hopefully from chapter 1, what the goal is, what that character is going to transform into, but they don't really know how it's going to happen. You need to know how it's going to happen, but they don't really know how it's going to happen. That's why they're reading your book. So let's go back to the Hunger Games. Katniss changes, right? We know that she's going to change from, she's already strong. She's already sort of this quiet rebel that, tries to do things on her own, tries to not follow the rules of the state. But when she goes through her journey, when she is involved in the game, she becomes a heroic figure. Also, not only does she become more heroic, but she also becomes more empathetic and she becomes wiser. She is better at strategizing. She's better at problem solving than she ever thought she could be. So she's moved from being sort of just a little rebel to being a heroic figure that ends up fighting for everyone and that is admired by other people. So with Rocky, we know that he's going from this very poor fighter to he's going to become a better fighter. We're not sure if he's going to win. we think he's going to win, but we're not really positive, right? If you ever watch that for the very, very first time. But what we see, right? So we know he's going to become some type of winner. He's either going to win or he's just going to win because he's brave enough to take on the challenger, or the champion. But what happens, right? He not only wins, but he proves to himself that he can survive, that he can go the distance, right? But he also becomes ends up respecting himself more. He grows that. So we need to know that part, right? What exactly are we ending with at the end? So the character has an idea. There's a story goal of where he's going to go and what the end is going to be like, but it's even going to be grander than the reader expects or that the character expects at the end. So for you to know what that transformation is going to be and how he's going to end up, what you need to ask yourself is, what is this character missing at the beginning of the story that he's going to have at the end of the story? What is it that he's missing? Is he missing courage? Is he missing respect for himself? Is he missing what? So in the other example that I used, the Pact, the Judy Picoult book, was that this character was really missing a piece of himself. He was missing an identity because he never saw himself as separate from this girl. He was always her boyfriend, right? So he learned to be an individual. So he was missing was really a part of himself. And by the end of the story, that's what he gets. So when it doesn't matter to really if he is cleared of this charge of murdering his girlfriend, because what he has gotten is a part of himself. He's learned to be independent. He's learned to think for himself. He's learned who he really is and what he really wants, aside from being part of this relationship. The question is, how are we going to get our character from A, before the change, right? At the opening, that opening image or scene we have of the character, to that final scene of where the character is going to end up, that image at the end with the character being in his new identity. So how is that transformation going to happen? Well, it's going to happen slowly. An important point to remember is that people resist change, even change that is good for them. So they have an image of themselves and they are very attached to that image. So in order for them to transform, to become that new image, that's why they need that trigger, right? There needs to be something strong that is going to push them to want to change, because they don't want to change. Whatever they think of themselves, whether they think of themselves as weak, unattractive, whatever it is, that's part of their image, and it's very hard to change somebody's image of themselves. So remember that that's the first thing, is that this transformation is going to have to happen slow. It's going to be little tiny steps where the character doesn't really realize even that he's changing, but he is. So in a way, there has to be something drastic that's going to happen that's going to push them to do something, right? That trigger has to be something drastic that in their lives that is going to say, well, I have to move forward. I have to go on this journey because there's no way I cannot go, right? With Chris, the guy from the Pact, the character from the Pact, well, he has no choice. When his girlfriend commits suicide and he is arrested, he is going on this journey, right? Something drastic has happened that is going to force him to change. So again, I'm offering you just a few examples, but I'm sure you've seen this, right? You've seen this type of transformation in novels that you've read, in movies that you've watched. In fact, why don't you let me know, what are some other movies or books that you've read where you have seen this very obvious type of transformation? Leave it in the comments below. So the first thing, this is why the opening of your story is so important. The first thing you need to do is really show the reader where the character is at the beginning of the story. If we want, for example, Rocky, right, doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't think he thinks he's worthless. This is where he is. This is the image he has of himself. So then what that type of person what will that person look like? What is that image that you're going to give your reader? Well, the movie does a really great job of showing us that, right? So what does this kind of character have? He doesn't have a very good life. He has horrible job that doesn't pay very much. He really is a street thug because that's all he really thinks of himself. That's all he thinks he can do. He doesn't think he's very smart, and everything reflects that. So he lives in a poor neighborhood. He doesn't have a lot of money. His friends like him are, just working class people. They're also not very wealthy. They don't expect much from life, so they don't have much in life. And so it's a perfect opening image because we can see that what he believes about himself is what is reflected in his life. So since the character believes that this life that he's leading is who he is, you as the author have to work really hard to convince him, right, that he needs something different. So there needs to be situations throughout your story that are going to push him to believe something different. He believes he is not very smart, then maybe he needs to do a few things to start to prove to him that he really is smarter than he thinks he is. If he believes that he can never make money, there's going to be situations where he's going to make money. You're going to show him that he can, right? So it's going to be a slow transformation where you're proving to your character that reflection of his life that he sees is not true. It's not the only thing that he can have or do. Okay, the second thing is what I call a wish for more. Okay, so even though your character does have this image of himself, even though his life is reflecting that image, he still wants more. He still says, well, I wish I could be this. I wish I was as smart as this person. I wish that I could be the champion of the world. I wish that I could win this war game and get out of this terrible situation. So they have to want more, even though they feel that they don't deserve it. They feel that they're not good. They're fearful of it. Whatever it is, they still have this desire inside of themselves for more. They still think that it sure would be nice to have this. And of course, you as the author know that he has these hidden skills, right? There are these hidden skills within this character that make it possible to have that wish if the character becomes bold enough, brave enough, whatever, to go for it. The next thing that has to happen, so the character has to have this desire, this wish to change, and he has to get the invitation to change. And most likely it's going to be that terrible disaster, right? It's going to be being put in jail. It's going to be whatever. With Rocky, it's actually a positive one. He gets the invitation to fight the champion of the world because the champion looks at him and thinks, oh yeah, that's a great guy. His Italian stallion, he's got the American flag. I'm going to fight against this guy. Right, he gets an invitation to prove himself. Even though he thinks he's going to be killed, he has no hope of winning, he takes the challenge, right? Because why? Because he has that wish in the back of his mind. I wish I could be better. I wish I could do whatever. So once that invitation comes, though, now you have to prove to him, to her, that they can do it. And what are we proving to the character? We're proving that he is not who he believed he was, but actually he's closer to having the goal that he really wanted to have. So you as the author are going to be creating these events in the story that are going to challenge that character, but that are going to move him towards that goal, right? They're going to move him towards that new person that he's going to be. And so the character might think throughout the whole thing, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to survive. This is going to kill me, but he's going to try to do it anyways because he has no hope at this point. He knows that he has to do it. With Rocky, he knows that, well, I'm going for it now. I'm either going to get killed or, I'm going to just hopefully be standing by the end of this fight. Same thing with Katniss, right? I'm going to go on this journey. I have no choice. I'm here. I'm going to learn how to fight. I'm going to learn how to make alliances. I'm going to learn how to do this so that I can survive. And the author does that, right? The author puts her in situations where she's going to have to learn how to fight, that she's going to get attacked. All these things are going to happen to her. With Rocky, there are situations where, how do you do this? How do you make him think more of himself? Well, maybe you dress him up a little differently so he looks more the part, the image of him at the end. You make him, you give him a coach that's going to believe in him, right? So you have things in the story that are going to help the character to change that image of himself. And little by little, your character is going to start seeing himself as this new person. And one of the things too, of course, that brings up the tension and makes it a better story is that it's not a straight line, right? It's not like, okay, here's A, here's Z, okay, he's just going to go up and he's going to do all these things and he's going to become the new person. It doesn't happen that right? So he starts off doing something, starts to believe himself, and something knocks him down, and then he doesn't believe in himself. And then he starts to believe himself again and again, something knocks him down. So it's not a straight line. There's going to be moments in the story where the character is going to lose confidence and he's not going to believe in himself. There's a battle here between the old self and the new self. So when he's thinking of himself as the old self, it's like, oh, I can't do this. Who do I think I am to be able to do this, right? But then when he's thinking of himself as the new person, it's like, okay, well, I have to do this. I have to become that person. I don't respect the old person. I'm afraid of the old person doesn't have any money. The old person doesn't have love, doesn't have whatever. The new person will have that. And that sounds so much better. And I'm on this journey, so I'm going to keep fighting, right? So there's a battle continuously between the old self and the new self. In fact, I was listening to a podcast recently where the speaker was talking about manifesting, right, things in your life. And the person said, it was interesting because it said, well, the reason that most people don't manifest what they want in their life is because they're still thinking like their old self, and they're still seeing that old self not having what they want. So same thing with your characters, right? As long as they're seeing themselves as that old self, it's going to be harder for them to achieve their goal. Ultimately, there needs to come a point in your story where your character is now willing to die in order to get his goal. Because going back to that old self is so unattractive, it's so disheartening that he no longer wants that. Okay, so definitely Katniss, she has no option. She's either going to die or she's going to fight and change and transform, right? Rocky, there's no way he wants to go back to being that hopeless self. There's nothing there for him. He's going to be forever poor. He's going to be forever a thug in the street. He's never going to have anything. So he's willing to die in order to change as a person, to become somebody that he can respect. So through these ordeals that you are going to put your character through, he is going to question who he really is and what he values in life. And he has to come to the conclusion that he would rather die than return to that old self, that shell of a life that really wasn't who he really was. So let's go through this one more time. First, you need a catalyst. Remember, the character doesn't want to change, so there needs to be a catalyst, something that that character is willing to change his whole life for, whether it's love, whether it's freedom, whatever it is. There is this catalyst or something that's strong enough to make the character want to change. That's the first thing you need to figure out. The second thing you want to do is understand clearly what the character is transforming into. What is he going from, and what is he going to? And remember that what he's going to has to be even more of what he thinks is going to be. If he's going to strength, it's going to be even stronger. Katniss thinks she's going from, being a rebel just to being super brave, or really just to survive. But really what she's going to become is heroic. She doesn't think that, but you as the author should know that. And the third thing is that you want to make sure that you know how that transformation is going to happen, that you make it slow and incremental changes, that the character has an identity, wishes for a better identity, is offered the opportunity to change, gives an invitation to change, is offered proof some point in the story or throughout the story that he really can transform, that he really can reach his goal, that you show the battle between the old and the new self, and that you ultimately have the character decide that he would rather die to become the new person than remain the old person that he was at the beginning of the story. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of how to create transformation for a character, and what we mean by transformation when we tell, when people say, well, an author has to go, a character has to go on a journey and transform. That's what transformation means. That's what you're changing. When someone says that the character is going to go on a character journey and he's going to transform, this is what we're talking about when we say transformation. So I hope this helps. If it does, I'd love for you to please hit the like button and also to subscribe to the channel. It's super helpful for me to have subscribers. I have very low subscribers, so I'm trying to raise it up. And you would help me by becoming a subscriber. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you again next week.